Zach Diamanti, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Hi, thanks.
Yeah, and congratulations to you being named a finalist for Writer of the Year.
Yeah, what a surprise that was for me.
How did you find out?
Well, funny enough, Andre Gonzalez reached out to me, gosh, I want to say about maybe 2 months ago, not maybe not quite. And he sent me an email, said, "Hey man, you've been nominated to be in the running for Writer of the Year. Why don't you send me over your bio and send me over some of those awards that you've been winning?" And I was like, okay, yeah, that's I totally unexpected. So, I kind of gathered up all my stuff and sent it over to him, and it was funny because we've kind of been seeing awards kind of trickling in for Stone and Sky, which has been really cool. But I kind of sent him. I was like, "Hey, I got this other one. Do you want me to keep sending these to you?" And he was like, "Yeah, keep sending them, I guess." And then just the other day, found out obviously that well, I'm one of the finalists, which is so cool and such a surprise, and honestly, such an honor. I just not expected it at all.
That's awesome. Great. For those who don't know Andre, he's just the what a go-getter, just energetic head of PPA, and just an active force within Rocky Mountain fiction writers.
Yeah, he's the
Um,
man.
yeah, yeah. Well, for those who don't know you, and I don't know you very much at all, other than what I've read and just poked around online, and I gotta say, anybody who dives into the world of ZS Diamanti is going to quickly discover that you have really built a world online that looks very complete. And I think it really carries over from your website to your social media and lots of other things you're doing. But take us back to
Yeah.
the beginning. How long have you been writing? Tell us about how you started your whole career.
Sure, yeah. I used to be an illustrator and a graphic designer. I still do some of those things, just very infrequently now. Since the
Yeah.
publishing of Stone and Sky, I've had to turn down some of those side jobs that I
Wow.
used to do.
Wow.
But it got too busy. I wasn't expecting how busy I was going to get after publishing, which was great. But I used to do that. A lot of the illustration stuff was just for my own heart. It was a way that I could express myself artistically. But then I went to Afghanistan. I was in the military before, and came back, and I needed something a little different, to something a different art form for me to express myself in a different way. And so I started writing short stories, a lot of horror, a lot of short sci-fi. Even wrote some, literary fiction and literary nonfiction, and some essays, and even sold some poetry, which is something I never thought I was going to do. And after a while, I started thinking, I maybe I could do this thing. I would really love to do this thing. And I'd always wanted to write a, classic style epic fantasy adventure series. I mean, ever since I was a kid, when I was a kid, I didn't have glasses and I could barely read, right? But there was one book a teacher put in my hand, and it was The Hobbit. And it didn't matter how hard it was for me to get my eyes to focus and read. I read that thing like crazy. And a week later, I wrote my first story ever called The Flobbit. Yep, very original.
Yeah.
Very original, sure. But it was the start of a love for storytelling, right? And so, and just let's see, it was about a couple of years ago that I started writing Stone and Sky. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided I was going to quit my job and pursue this thing and really go after it. And Stone and Sky published on August 29th of last year. And since then, we've published we've got four books out now.
Yeah.
As of June 4th, the final book in the trilogy actually comes out. So very excited. I actually finally have a test print of the last
Yeah.
one, which is so exciting. Of course, it's always exciting to get the test print.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got so many questions. So, was there something specific about Afghanistan? Well, first of all, also tell us what branch you were
Sure,
in
yeah.
Afghanistan, what you did over there. Was there something about the experience that really seemed to reignite? Clearly, the writing was there before, but you said you were mostly doing graphic design and illustration prior
Totally.
to Afghanistan. Then you came home and said you really wanted to write. Was there something about the experience that really made you want to put words together?
Yeah, it was I was Air Force medical. And so especially in the medical field, you see a lot of things that are rough, really rough things that you can't really unsee. And you experience some things, especially in a war zone, that you can't unexperience. And it's
Yeah.
you come back and especially with something that's so graphic and visual, it was hard for me to continue to do art and in the visual realm. And so I needed something else because art kind of was my outlet before, drawing was my outlet before. And so I needed something that was different. And so I really just kind of started writing down some of my thoughts. And then, some of these stories just kind of started popping in my head. And I was like, man, I would love to write this story. This would be such an interesting story. And then it all started snowballing from there.
Yeah. When did you serve in Afghanistan? How long were you there? And
Yeah,
without
yeah.
going into too much detail, can you just give us an idea of some of the experiences
Yeah.
you had?
Yeah, so I was there in 2009 and 2010, and so it's been a minute now. It's pretty wild. And back then it was still pretty gnarly over there. We weren't winding down yet in Afghanistan, and so there was still very active mission, things going on all the time. I mean, I remember it was like my first week there. Maybe a couple of weeks in, but we had mass casualty avalanche that had nothing to do
Hmm.
with war, but this avalanche that just came through and just it destroyed all sorts of things. I mean, it's so interesting the things you'll experience in war zone, but even more so the humanity that you'll experience in a war zone, which is, at its worst and at its best. So the experience was just very poignant.
Yeah. Before we get to Stone and Sky, and we definitely
Yeah.
want to talk about that whole world, did you, when you came back, did you stay in the military for a while or did you leave at
Yeah,
that point?
yeah. So I got stationed in Colorado, which we were really
Okay.
excited about. So we moved our family out to Colorado, and I was there. I was stationed at a space base for a few years, and and then eventually got out. Yep.
Yeah. Where were you from originally then?
Actually, my dad was in the military as well. So I actually grew up in around the Air Force my entire life. So my entire life, I've had, flying machines all around me, which is just such a fascinating life. You
Yeah,
always
yeah.
look into the sky, which is kind of why I started writing the fantasy series that I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. But was your training more in the medical side, or were you also a pilot? Or
Yeah, so I was just medical side for sure.
okay,
Yep. Mhm.
wow. And so you grew up traveling around then as
Totally.
a
Yeah.
Air Force brat, as they
Yeah,
call them,
every
I
other
guess.
year. I think we were counting it the other day for something I can't even remember, but it was like I've moved maybe 30 times and I
Oh my
think I'm
gosh.
36. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And now you're settled in one place for a
that
number of years.
we're settled here for a while. I think we'll be in
Yeah,
Colorado for a little while.
yeah,
Get all the kids through school and that kind of stuff.
yeah. Where do you live exactly?
Yeah, so we're just outside of Colorado Springs.
Okay,
Yeah, in a little town called Falcon, which
sure. Yeah.
is not even really a town yet, according to the post
Yeah.
office. So,
Yeah. I
we're
know it.
it's getting sorted out.
Yeah, it's getting bigger all the time though, and just northeast of Colorado Springs, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, yep, that's it. Yeah, and just the city is just continues to grow like
Yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what's happened to Colorado Springs and Falcon area in the last 10 years or so. It's
Yeah,
incredible. Well, very good. So let's get into Stone and Skies. Tell us, I
sure.
mean, you wanted to write an epic fantasy. What was the sort of spark? And tell us about the world that you created and the characters.
Yeah, sure. It all kind of started, excuse me, it all kind of started with this idea that I thought, I don't think there's enough like really cool aerial combat in fantasy worlds. And of course, I grew up around the Air Force my entire life, and I was in the Air Force myself. So
Yeah.
very much in my space. And excuse me. And I decided, you know what? Maybe that'll be the premise of this world. Every fantasy race is going to have their own flying force, right? And so, I started with Stone and Sky, and I was like, okay, the humans are going to have griffins, right? And then the orcs are going to ride wyverns, and then the elves are going to ride pegasi, and then I was like, hey, what do the dwarfs ride? And then I started getting really creative and I was like, they're gonna ride these things called Garvox that are basically panthers with bat like wings, and you have to magically bond with them. And you just run off in a fantasy world and then you have fun. And then I was like, okay, well, now I got to come up with a story. Like we want this epic, classic style, epic adventure, right? We got to have a story. And so I took like the first character, and I said, you know what? His entire Griffin squadron's going to die. Oh, man. Now he doesn't have a Griffin. So I created this really robust, cool world. And then I was like, but I'm going to take that away from him, like right away. Because he has to go on an adventure. And so I did that, and of course we go on an epic fantasy adventure. But because the world was so robust, I was like, man, we can really make this like very classic style, do multi POV. We can follow this ragtag crew that's trying to get him back to, the Griffin Guard, and then we could follow the King and the Griffin Guard over here, and we can follow, the orcs of Drelek over here, and just I really, really wanted to get that vibe, that old school classic 80s, 90s kind of classic fantasy vibe. And man, have I been surprised how much people really actually wanted that.
Wow. Can you, when you say 80s and 90s classic vibe, name some authors? I'm not a
Sure. Yeah.
fantasy reader myself, so if people are listening
Yeah.
to say, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of comparisons to like worlds like Dragonlance, um, you know, uh, 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 with Weiss and Hickman. We've got worlds like Forgotten Realms. Think of R.A. Salvatore and The Legend of Drizzt,
Okay.
or getting a lot of comparisons with The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and I've gotten people have even said, it made me feel like I was reading the Rift War saga. It made me feel like I was reading, Wheel of Time for the first time, and just getting back that nostalgic feeling of, man, this is just like classic fantasy adventure with adventure and magic and found family and trying to overcome insurmountable odds, good versus evil, old school classic. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So tell us about writing that first one. What was that process like? What did you do to, get it into a shape that you were happy with it in terms of saying, you're gonna bring it out?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I wrote a lot of short form stuff before, and so I kind of ran into it like I was a pantsing my way through it, right?
Yeah,
Hey, let's
yeah,
go on
yeah,
an adventure. I was going with
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and I quickly realized it was much bigger than I expected, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm gonna have to actually really start plotting some of this and really get organized with this, which was something that I'd never really had to do before because obviously, short form is a little different. You kind of approach it differently. And so really started plotting things out, really figuring out how all these characters and all the plot was going to come together. And eventually I was like, okay, I think this book is just about ready. Like I'm ready. And of course it was the first one. So, I had no idea that my editing was gonna just gut it.
Yeah.
So of course, I found some trusted people that I could put it through that had specific skills. Went through a developmental edit, found all sorts of problems that I had to fix. Okay, let me go fix those, and then went through the line edit, and I was like, oh, okay, look at all these grammar things that I'm terrible at. Okay, let me fix that. Luckily, I'm a very good learner. If somebody gives me all the edits, I make a mental note, and in the next book, I tend to fix those things, which is great. And then I had a final editor who was very, very meticulous, very good at, pinpointing some of the things. And not only that, but she was also very willing to teach and help me get better. And so, I learned through the process of editing, oh, this is what I really want to get to. And so, Stone and Sky took me a couple of years to write. And then Stone and Tide, I was able to write in like 3 months. And that was like, taking about a month off in like
Yeah.
sporadically through there. And, I wrote Stone and Ruin, which is the one that comes out in June. I wrote that one in 2 months, and I had a whole month in between where I was sick and I couldn't write.
Mm.
And it was fascinating to watch, like the process, like as you write, you get better, which is your hope, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
hope
for
you're gonna
sure.
get better as you go along. And it was just funny because it was interesting to see how like, oh, Stone and Sky, my final edits, really cut out like 7,000 words. Stone and Ruin, my final edits kind of cut out like 3,500 words. And then that was Stone and Tide. And then Stone and Ruin, it's like, we only cut out like 1,500 words. Man, I'm getting tighter and tighter. This is great. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and funny enough, they all ended up being like 121,000 words. I think they're all like 500 words apart, which is
Wow. Yeah.
wild. I was like, all right, I guess that's
Yeah.
what tight plotting can do for you, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess the process of learning, I'm gonna, this is my theory. Maybe all your Air Force training around medical stuff, you can't, once you learn it and apply it, you gotta figure out how to get good at it.
Yeah,
So I
totally.
assume that brain of yours that got trained in very, very high risk, critical, high stakes situations, that ability to be taught something once and apply it, you then turned around and applied that to writing.
Totally. And that has and it's a thing, right? In the medical world, you're always learning. You always have to learn something, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a mentality shift for me. Obviously, as a kid in high school, I was like, I could barely read because I didn't have glasses and I didn't know I needed them. And so I hated it. I hated learning. But man, once I got to the military and they're like, oh, dude, you got to learn this, you got to learn this. And then they were like, oh, also, dude, you need glasses. I was like, oh man,
Wow.
okay, this is great. And man, that learning mentality just changed everything. And so now I'm a heavy researcher. Again, I quit my job about a year and a half ago, and Stone and Sky, excuse me, only came out about 6 months ago. Which and it was pretty much done. It was just waiting final edits for about I want to say it was almost a year before I actually hit that publish button because I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I was doing it well. So I spent months, setting up a website and setting up a newsletter and writing reader magnets and setting up all sorts of things that, are foundational for an author career. Because I didn't want to be, writing one book. That's a great goal, but that wasn't my goal. My goal is like I want to have an author career. So totally
Well,
different aim.
that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. It looks to me like you knew from the get-go you were going to do self indie publishing. Did you at all consider going traditional at any point?
Yeah, I did consider it. I did consider it. There has been I did a lot of research, of course, and I'm kind of a go-getter. I like to learn. I like to go figure things out. I like to see how it works, right? I want to know how it works, and then I end up trying wanting to be like the best at it. I want to learn how it works and then go and do it and execute it. I feel like I'm always one of those guys that like if I learn something, I want to execute it. Why would I learn it if I wasn't going to execute it, right? So I spent a lot of time researching the differences, and I even actually did send out Stone and Sky to a couple of agents. But actually, I ended up, publishing before I heard back from half of
Yeah.
them. So it was like I was like, I'm kind of on my own train here. So if you guys
Yeah.
aren't with me, then see ya. I'm gonna go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I do have other projects though in the pipeline currently that are kind of more on that traditional path, which is kind of interesting, kind of a different way to publish. But I currently one project that I'm on contract for writing later this year. But for the most part, yeah, the indie life kind of made sense for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once you dove into the indie life, did you do your own, because you're an illustrator, did you do your own covers and design? Did you format the books yourselves? Did you
Yeah.
handle all the back end kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah. So I did handle a lot of that. I actually hired an artist to paint my
Oh,
covers.
oh
I
wow.
wanted something a little different than my own style.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's just knowing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wanted something different than my own style. So that was kind of an easy choice for me. So I hired an artist to paint the covers. I actually did all the, type fonts and all the graphics and the design elements. I did all those stuff because it was like, okay, that's something I can do, no big deal.
Yeah.
And I did all the formatting, which I found was actually fascinating and super fun for me because it was like, oh, this is how I get to make the book pretty on the inside.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
as a designer and illustrator, the prettiness, I was like, oh, that's great. This is right up my alley. Let's do this. So I had to do some learning, of course, and I have Windows machines, so I couldn't use Vellum like other people. So I ended up getting Atticus, which I actually really like, and we were able to make some really pretty books that people that feel good in people's hands, and it really just
Yeah.
brings back some comfort vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you able to maybe hold up one of the books for those on
Sure,
video and
yeah,
just show us the interior a little bit, or is there
yeah.
anything that you could kind of just show us the layout
Yeah,
inside or any
absolutely. So
illustration?
this one's Stone and Ruin. This is the one that's coming
Yeah.
out here in June.
Yeah.
As you can see on the inside, we got all sorts of
Oh,
stuff like, hey,
yeah, yeah.
go get the rest of the series, get some free preludes. You got your cover, your title, and copyright. I actually really enjoyed some of the paintings, so I
Yeah.
decided to grayscale them and put them on the inside to make it,
Yeah.
just that much prettier. And I ended up,
It's
I actually ended up drawing a whole map
there
for
you
my
go.
world too.
Very
Uh,
inviting. Very, very inviting. Yeah.
very, very old school map with, mountains and trees. I had to hand draw all of those trees. Yeah, it looks like little blobs or like,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of trees. So I spent
Fantasy
about
and fantasy readers like maps,
gotta have a
don't
map,
they?
gotta have a map.
Yeah.
And then of
Yeah.
course they did,
Yes.
the map around the
Yeah.
chapter titles and all that stuff, of course. I even did a little bonus, ornamental breaks with the
Nice.
mountains and trees and stuff. And I just wanted to make it really pretty, very much like I wanted it to be a fun fantasy adventure for the whole package. Like the whole package
Yeah.
should be like that, of course. And then of course you got other stuff, hey, join the newsletter and all that
Right.
stuff, right? And I did that from the get-go, from in all the books, right? And
Yeah.
so I really wanted the package to like be fun. I want the whole experience to exude fun, right? And of course, it's not all lollipops and rainbows in
Yeah.
the books. Of course, a roller coaster is designed to be fun, right? But sometimes you're screaming on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're terrified on a roller coaster. Sometimes you got tears coming out of your eyes on a roller coaster. You get all those vibes, right? So uh, I really wanted it to be fun, and that's I think that was a huge part for us starting out, and when I really started selling the book in August 29th of last year. It, people were buying autographed books, and we were packaging them up with all sorts of fun goodies like stickers and recipes, like fantasy recipes from the world, from the book, and just all sorts of fun, good stuff that we just wanted people to like, hey, you don't know who I am yet. You don't know who I am yet, and I want to take you on an adventure with me. So, when you open that box, the first thing you see is a wax sealed envelope with a map on the inside that's got a little handwritten note from me. I
Wow.
want the first
Wow.
thing you do, like when you open this box, the fun has begun, right? So that was a big thing for us, really starting out.
Wow. This you really, I mean, that's what I meant at the beginning. When you dive into your world online, you can see it's all thought out. It's all kind of cohesive and together. You really put a lot of planning into this.
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's funny because again, I kind of started the whole process of writing it not as a planner or not as a plotter per se, but boy, that changed quick as I as I was going through the
Yeah,
first book.
yeah. Wow. So tell us about what was your process in terms of deciding how to publish it, which system to use, and what did you end up using?
Sure, yeah. I did a lot of research. Of course, I research
Yeah,
everything. I did a lot of research and wanted to decide on, hey, are we gonna go KDP? The age-old question: Are we going KDP? Are we going Ingram Spark? Are we gonna do Book Vault? Are we gonna do Kobo and all the other things, right? And I decided to go wide out the gate, which I not everybody tends to do, and it's also not recommended by a lot of folks, especially when you can really boost some things with the with Kindle Unlimited, right? And getting
right.
page reads and stuff like that, right? I decided to go wide out the gate. I am one of those people who doesn't like to put all his eggs in one basket. I don't want didn't want something to happen and then all of a sudden, I'm toast. I'm
Yeah.
out with the laundry. And so I was like, okay, I want to learn how to do all the things. Let me figure out how to sell books on, Kobo. Let me figure out how to sell books on Apple Books and Google Books and Google Play Books and Draft to Digital. Let me figure out how to sell books on through Ingram Spark. Let me figure out how to sell books on Barnes and Noble. Again, I like to figure out how everything works. Now that I've figured out how everything works, I'm also kind of like, okay, now I don't mind moving over to maybe I will move over to KU, right? Maybe I will move over to this. I've seen how some of this works, and I go, okay, now that I've got more author friends and people that I talk to and people who are willing to share information with me, I'm also like, okay, that's great. Well, here's what I've learned over here. What are you learning over there? Oh, that sounds pretty good too. Let me figure that out.
Yeah.
Maybe I will switch to those things. So, I went wide out the gate, and I think I'm fortunate because I did build a pretty solid TikTok following prior to my book coming out. Um, it was that was one of the big strategies that we had as far as marketing went. Uh, I last a year and change ago, I had almost zero social media presence. I mean, now we're probably 60,000 something people between all the social medias at this point, right? And
Wow.
um, when you go from 0 to 60, hey, that's a pretty fitting analogy, actually. When you go from 0 to 60 in about a year, you're like, holy cow, you can really do some things. And people take notice and they go, hey, what are you doing? And it's fun because for me, it's like, man, I know who you are. This is great. Like, and you want to know what I'm doing. This is awesome. And the sharing of information among indie authors is one of the biggest things that has been an absolute surprise and joy for me in this journey.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Just let's take TikTok as an example. What
Yeah,
kind of content did you put out there before you'd been published? What did you do to
yeah.
build your audience?
Yeah, so one of the big things that you got to do, it's so you're playing with an algorithm. Whichever social media you go with, you're playing with an algorithm, period. End of story. Every algorithm is different. However, each social media has a different algorithm and how they work. And with TikTok, it was very much, okay, I need TikTok to understand that my account is about fantasy books. And so, for weeks before I even started posting, it was like, I'm just gonna, search and interact with other people who are making fantasy bookish content, right? Epic fantasy, clean fantasy, classic fantasy, all the different iterations. I was searching that like every day for a couple of weeks. Once the TikTok algorithm knew what my account was about, the very first post I made, got a few thousand views and got me over 1,000 followers,
Wow.
like
Wow.
overnight, right? And because I trained the algorithm to know what my account was about, and then it showed it to the right people, right? And then, of course, after that, for months, it was, just fantasy bookish content, not even related to my books at all, or the fact that I was writing a book at all for months, just talking about different fantasy books that I loved, things
Smart.
within the space. And I was gathering like-minded people because of that, right? You're gathering people who loved all these classic style fantasy books, which is exactly what my books are about. And so, a couple months before the book comes out, now I start slipping in some,
Yeah.
videos and content about the fact that I do have books coming out. These are
Yeah.
my books. This is what I've been writing. This is what I've been working on, and worked really beautifully, especially because I had set up. The website, I had set up the reader magnet, which actually turned into a Preludes collection, which I was so excited. Happy accidents.
What is it? What does that say again?
So it's
This
the
is
Stone and Sky Preludes collection. And it was so fun because I actually just wrote, 7 stories about characters that show up in Stone and Sky.
ah
Because I thought it would be so much fun. I was like, I love these guys, man. I wish they had more page time. So I decided to write more stories about them. And then, I was giving these away for free as my reader magnet, them going on a whole welcome journey, getting each one, in a separate email over time. Um, and then I eventually realized, I might have enough content out of all of these preludes to make a collection out of it. And of course, I did. I started putting it together, formatting it, and sure enough, I did. I was like, "This is pretty awesome." And then, of course, Stone and Sky and the Preludes collection kind of came out together, but people were already falling in love with these characters before we even got to that point. And it was just super cool to see people just follow the trail and the breadcrumbs and the things that you put in front of them ready to go. And they're like, I love it. I want more. And they just follow you right into it. And that was really awesome.
that I think that's a great lesson in just focus and a single message, really just a clear purpose. And I think the world, the algorithm, and I think the audiences out there, they want to know what you're all about. And the more you tell them that you're about one thing and that's the thing you care about, the more they'll respond to that. That's really
Totally.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Wow.
you're bringing, you're gathering like-minded people around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Building community. Yep. That's great. Wow.
And by setting it up that way, you're kind of setting yourself up for success already because fact of the matter is if that's what you're doing as well, well, they're probably going to like what you're doing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we haven't talked about this, but I mean, I think I know the answer, but I want to hear you talk about it. What was the response on publication day when the first book, the first full-length novel came out? What was that like, and what has the response been to the first two books so far?
Yeah. Yeah, man. The first day Stone and Sky came out, I was, obviously I was sick to my,
Yeah,
just like any author, your first book coming out, you're just sick with dread, and joy and all sorts of emotions that are mixing into your stomach and making you sour. But the response when I was started getting reviews back like the day of from people who just went out and bought it and read the whole thing in one day.
yeah,
It blew my mind, completely blew my mind. And, of course, I was already on a fast track to get all my books in this series out pretty quickly. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't finish them in a day. Like, so
yeah,
obviously there was a lot of mixed emotions, but it was so well received and so exciting. And so many people were, you know, uh, already knew who I was from, just from the social media side of things. And they were excited to share in the joy with me. And they were excited with me that it was just incredible. And the sales in the first few months just, I mean, completely astounded us, more than we even remotely expected. And then of course Stone and Tide comes out on it came out in February, the first week in February. And of course, you got a little bit of sickness, but you're like, okay, I've been here before. I know I know how we're doing it. But then the sickness is a little different because you're like, well, I really hope that I wasn't like one and done and everybody loved the first one and now I suck. And
yeah,
sure enough, it comes out and first day people are leaving reviews. It's even better than the first one. And you're just like, all right, cool. I am getting better. That's the stuff.
that's
We're
great.
going in the right
Wow,
direction, right?
wow. Do you mind sharing numbers? Do you mind just,
Sure, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so in the first few months, we sold thousands of books. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in the first 2 months. In the first 2 months, we hit 2,000 books.
that's
Um,
great. Wow,
which of course for brand new indie author debut
sure, it's
novel, I
amazing.
mean that's
Yeah,
beyond beyond
terrific.
what we expected.
Yeah.
um
You
in
keep
the
saying we. You keep saying we. Is that the
I
universal we?
yeah, my wife is she helps me out with a lot of the number side of things.
All right, let's give her credit then. Let's give her
Yes, my
credit.
wife Brittany is brilliant. She's definitely the number side.
All
She
right.
definitely keeps track of all that stuff and organizes all that stuff for us. So that's the we.
Okay. All right. Glad we got our credit on
Yes,
here.
yeah,
Good.
yeah, yeah. She definitely deserves all the credit for that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
beyond what we expected, of course.
W
And
would you say most ebooks or a lot of physical books too? Or
yeah, great question. So actually, a large majority have been physical books, and a large majority were actually signed copies because
nice.
through the TikTok shop, actually.
Yep.
Well, that's not a majority of our sales, but it definitely was a majority of the income, actually, because obviously with signed books, you charge a little bit extra. Plus, if you're doing the fulfillment, you
Right.
get you get a better cut on it, right? You get a better percentage on it. And so that's where a lot of the financial gains happen, especially going into the release of Stone and Sky. I mean, just to be totally transparent, we were negative. Like our family finances were negative. We were negative. We I sometimes tell people, oh, we were at $0 in the bank. Well, actually, technically, we were at like negative 5,000 because of,
Yeah.
you're investing with credit at that point because you've run out. And it was like,
Yeah.
well, we were aiming at August and here we are. This is it. We better
Yeah.
do it. Like we better do it. And sure enough, we've thank goodness we have been able to, of course, backfill that. And now we're kind of at that point where we are financially able to process the next. We've got the capital to actually process the new book, and we've got the capital to, start moving audiobooks, and we've done a couple of Kickstarters now, which have, been successful and beyond what we expected there as well. So, you know, it's been a really crazy 6 months, but
Yeah,
it's
wow.
been absolutely awesome.
That's great. Wow. Boy, it feels like there's just so many different aspects of this that I could dive down to. You mentioned audiobooks. We didn't really even get into that. And
Yeah.
I did run across the Kickstarter campaigns on in your world. Like I say, I just keep mentioning this. Anybody who wants to kind of just
My
dive into
big
your
bubble.
world, yeah, there's a lot there. Um, Clearly a busy guy. So is the trilogy just a trilogy? Are you going to start another trilogy or another series, or are you going to add on to this? What's the plan?
Yeah, that's great. So this trilogy is complete. I
Okay.
decided this is going to be a trilogy, and
Okay.
that's going to be it, right? So the
He's
Sun and
holding up
Sky
he's holding
trilogy.
up four books, but it really is a trilogy.
Yes, yes, yes. The
Yeah,
Preludes
yeah,
collection was a
yeah,
happy
yeah,
accident.
yeah, yeah,
Um, it's done as June 4th. Stone and Ruin comes out, and that trilogy is done. However, the world of Finlestia that the trilogy takes place in is much bigger than just this trilogy. So I've got standalone books planned for the world of Finlestia. I've got other trilogies slash series planned for the world of Finlestia, but I also got stuff outside of the world of Finlestia planned and in the wheelhouse and in varying stages of project management. So
yeah. Wow. Well, just as we wrap up here, I'm just sort of curious, how many hours a day writing and how many hours a day managing the business side?
Oh yeah, definitely. I try to do half and half. So I try to do my mornings as writing and then my afternoons as business. However, I do find that the closer I get to the end of a manuscript, the more I bear down on the manuscript and forget the business side. So like that last week, that last 2 weeks of wrapping up a book, it's like all book, all writing, and then after it's done, I pass it off to the developmental editing, and then it's like I jump into business side for a couple of weeks to catch up on all the things I neglected for those prior couple of weeks. And then we get back into a healthy rhythm of writing in the morning and business in the afternoon.
Yeah. Which is more fun?
Writing for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
I don't
I
know
mean,
any writer who would probably choose that, but choose the
yeah.
business side. But
But it
hey,
sounds to me like you make it fun. You make the business side fun too, it sounds
I
like.
try to. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got a mug that says good vibes only. I try
yeah,
to
yeah. That's good.
keep close by.
Yeah. Well, Zach, this has been I think we've been skipping stones across your world, but we've got a sense of it. And I really appreciate all your time today. We always like to kind of wrap up with recommending a book or a writer to kind of pay it forward a little bit. So
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
Yeah, let me grab it. I can reach it here. I was thinking about this since you warned me ahead of time.
Yeah.
Uh, I recently finished this book. It's called A Vengeful Realm, or at least the series is called A Vengeful Realm by Tim Fasciola. This is book one. It is The Scales of Balance, and it's a Greco-Roman inspired fantasy with a lot of political intrigue and action and one of the main characters is thrown into slavery and has to become a gladiator, but turns out he's actually got magic, and it's really really awesome. It was a really fun read. I'm actually really excited to jump into the second book, but there you go, Scales of Balance by Tim Fasciola, and he's another indie author, so definitely kudos to him.
Well, and for those listening and can't see it, Zach is holding up a book that looks like it weighs about 20 pounds. It was gigantic, you
Yes,
know.
it is gigantic. He sent me the
Yeah,
hardcover, of course, and so it's a brick for sure.
yeah, I bet that's 150,000 words at least. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
yeah, pretty
yeah,
close.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Zach, thank you so much for all your time today. Congratulations again on the
Thank you, Mark.
Writer of the Year finalist
Thank you,
nomination.
thank you. Very
And
exciting.
hopefully we'll see you at Colorado Gold
Yeah,
in
definitely.
September,
It's on my
if not
calendar.
before.
I'm ready.
All right. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
Hey, come with me. We're gonna go pack the 500th autograph copy ordered from our TikTok shop. What? Let's go. Number 500. Wow, let's go. That's so amazing. Since this is our 500th autograph copy order from TikTok, I decided we should do something a little special. Number 500 didn't order the Preludes collection, but I think we're gonna throw one in anyways. It's always nice to surprise people with generosity. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. And since this is such a special number, it just makes sense. Let's do it. TikTok order number 500 for Stone and Sky autograph copies is all packed up. I better pack the rest of these boxes before we head off to the post office. I am absolutely blown away. You guys have been so supportive of Stone and Sky and me. I almost don't even have words. 500 autograph copies of Stone and Sky on the TikTok shop. Thank you guys for your love and support. Thank you so much for supporting an indie author and enjoying classic style epic fantasy adventures. You guys are awesome.